Welcome to our review on vaccination. When we're talking about a vaccine, what we're referring to is a kind of medical treatment that contains a small amount of either dead or attenuated, which just means weakened, pathogens. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to insert it into the body, and we normally do that through an injection. And as a result of that, our immune system is going to kick in, and our white blood cells will produce antibodies to the pathogen. And the great thing about this is that it allows us to build up these antibodies to a pathogen without actually having to get ill in the first place. Once we've actually been exposed to this vaccination, then your body is going to create a special kind of cell called a memory cell. And those will just remain in the body, so that if we then encounter that same pathogen at a later stage, the memory cells replicate really quickly and they produce the antibodies. And that means we can make those antibodies before the symptoms show and deal with the pathogen before we get ill. When we're considering why we actually use vaccines, then hopefully you've got that really obvious answer of it helps to control these infectious diseases. And actually, through the use of vaccines, we've brought a lot of those very damaging infectious diseases of the past under control. And a really good example for this is measles. So if you look at the graph on the right there, you can see how many cases we used to have prior to the vaccination program. And then as that vaccination kicks in, look at them drop off. Now, what we actually see is as the vaccination uptake gets up to 94% on the 1990 section of the graph, then the number of cases is incredibly low. So what we've actually done there is we've very much reduced the spread of measles. If we think about an even greater success story of vaccination, then we need to think about a condition called smallpox. Now, smallpox was particularly unpleasant. It was a pox, so that meant you got covered in all these little spots, but it used to literally cover the body and killed large numbers of people. But we developed a vaccination for it, and through a worldwide vaccination program, we can now say we've eliminated smallpox from planet Earth. The only place you find it is in secure labs now. Another big advantage of our vaccinations is that it prevents epidemics. What we used to find was that when you had an infectious disease and a few people caught it, it would spread through the population incredibly quickly, infecting large numbers of people. These days, because we can vaccinate a large percentage of the population, not everyone, there are some people who won't be vaccinated for various reasons, then it means those epidemics are less likely to occur. And even those few people who are not vaccinated, they're less likely to catch the disease because everyone around them is vaccinated, so it's harder for it to spread from one person to the next. And that principle is something called herd immunity, where the majority are vaccinated and that protects everyone within the group. Of course, there are also some disadvantages to vaccination. First and foremost, they don't always work. Sometimes you'll have had a vaccination, but you won't get immunity from it. The second one is that some people can have a reaction to a vaccine. So this could be something like the swelling, as you can see in the picture at the bottom there, or you might get a fever afterwards. Some of the claims that have been made in the past, however, about some of the problems associated with vaccines, that's really bad science that's actually put those ideas forward, and they've been completely disproven now. So just be mindful of the fact that yes, there are some side effects, but not to the levels that some people have reported in the press in the past. When it actually comes to making that decision as to whether or not to have a vaccination, then you need to go through this process of weighing up the benefits and the risks. So if we consider measles again, which is one of those ones that's got a lot of controversy around it as a result of that bad science, but is a very common disease as well. Then if you get infected with measles, then there's a 1 in 15 chance that you'll develop some kind of a complication. So you might get something like pneumonia, for example. And 1 in 500 people who become infected with measles will actually die. So while this is a common infection that a lot of people think is not much, actually it kills quite a large number of the people it infects. If we then compare that to the number of people who have a problem with the vaccine for measles, then that's only 1 in a million. So in this case, I would say that the benefits quite clearly outweigh the risks. But that's something that you need to do when you're looking at anything like this, where there are advantages and disadvantages. If you're asked to evaluate, then you need to talk about both the pros and the cons, and then you give your final judgment at the end based on that. But all of these will be around the idea of, does the benefit outweigh the risks? Hopefully at the end of this video you can actually describe how vaccinations work, and you can talk about what's meant by herd immunity, that if enough people are immune to a particular pathogen, then it reduces the likelihood of it spreading.